Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the regularly scheduled Board of Directors meeting for Marin Water on Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Terry, roll call, please.
Vice President Jed Smith,
Here.
Director Ranjiv Kush,
Here.
Director Diana Mayer,
Here.
Director Larry Russell,
Here.
and President Matt Sampson.
Here. Do we have any public comment on the adoption of the agenda?
There are none.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Vice President Smith,
Here.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Here.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and President Sampson.
Yes. Moving on to item number 3, the announcement of our closed session this evening. Do we have any public comment on the closed session item?
There are none.
Great. We'll go ahead and convene to closed session and reconvene when we're all set. Great. We're reconvening from closed session at 6:47 with no reportable outcome. And with that, we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda matters.
Yes, good evening. We have two speakers. The first speaker is Phil Sauter and then Martha Davis.
Good evening. Most days I check the district's homepage to see what's new in usage trends and conservation programs. It's been a good source of data for how we're doing as we recover from the drought and adjust our usage habits to prepare for the next one. I expect most customers drop into the website to either pay a bill or look for information, and probably both. I also appreciate that there are links to customer usage data for those who want more detail on how they and their fellow customers are doing. The last few months, though, I've had a few unanswered questions, some of which I think would be helpful for customers to have answered. For example, right under the call for conservation are the daily usage numbers that have shown all year that our daily usage is up by nearly 10% from last year. I can't tell whether that's because of residential customers or because of commercial customers or because of customers in my area or in other parts of the district who are using more water rather than conserving. I can click on a link that shows me per capita water use and see a substantial decline after the 2021 drought, but I can also see that it's been creeping back up ever since. I can't tell whether the conservation message isn't getting through or just getting through to some customers and not others, or if there are other non-residential customers who are increasing their usage. And the labels are telling me that I'm looking at 2023 data, even though I know that 2024 data and even some 2025 data are available. I'm one of many trying to understand how to do a better job of conserving water, and I definitely have an appreciation for the district's knowledge base. I think it would be helpful to all of us to make sure our information is up to date, along with some comments to help us understand why our focus on conservation as our #1 water supply option currently appears to be leading to higher usage numbers rather than lower usage numbers. Of course, anything that shows up on the website could easily appear in emails, mailers, and water bills. I know the knowledge and understanding exists here in this building, and I'd like to ask that it becomes a little more widely available to an interested and loyal customer base. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis and then Marilyn Price.
Good evening. I am Martha Davis, and I serve on the board for the Nicasio Landowners Association. I want to thank you, President Sampson and Director Kush, and along with your staff, for taking time on June 26, 5 p.m., right, to talk with our community at the Nicasio School about the Nicasio Spillway Modification Proposal. I also want to compliment the district for its great work on the restoration of Lagunitas Creek. Last week, I attended the Lagunitas tour that was jointly sponsored by Sustainable Conservation and the district. One of the issues discussed on the tour was the challenge posed by the buildup of sediments behind dams that deprive the downstream creeks of the gravel they need for healthy habitats. After the tour, I found the district's Lagunitas watershed plan along with an earlier Lagunitas Creek stewardship plan on your website. Seeing these plans made me wonder whether the district is implementing other sediment management programs, especially for your reservoirs. I looked, but I could not find a sediment plan for Nicasio Reservoir, although I might have missed it. If I did, I ask that your staff send me a copy. Over the weekend, I did do more research on the problem of reservoir sedimentation. Not surprisingly, according to the American Society for Civil Engineering, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, California Department of Water Resources, and many, many others, the cumulative loss of reservoir water storage due to the buildup of sediments is now a huge problem across the country. It is also rapidly growing worse due to climate change. The Scott Dam, which is part of the Potter Dam project in Sonoma, is a prime example of what it means to lose a reservoir because it has filled up with silt. Clearly, one of the critical aspects of the Nicasio Spillway Modification Proposal is the need for a proactive sediment management in Nicasio Reservoir, along with a plan for maintaining the creeks that flow into it. As you know, Nicasio is a shallow reservoir, less than 100 feet deep, according to last week's IJ editorial, and is surrounded by highly erodible terrain. I am concerned that raising the Cascio spillway without first having a basic asset management plan in place to address the continuing sediment buildup in the reservoir is akin to putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. At best, it is a temporary remedy that doesn't deal with the underlying problem. The reservoir is losing storage capacity because it is filling with sediment, and at the same time, the sediment deposition in the streams is causing serious upstream flooding that is harming our landowners today. We are looking forward to next week's meeting with you and our Nicasio community. It would be very helpful if you and your staff could be prepared to discuss how the district plans to manage the continuing sediment buildup in Nicasio Reservoir.
Ms. Price, please.
Yes, hi. Just listening to Phil and giving the numbers, it's a very tricky thing how we can influence our residents out there. There are a lot of people that are very environmentally focused and are doing their very best to save water. But then there are a lot of people that are maybe medium so, and then a lot that you really can't even reach. There is a group at Yale. There are also other groups that study behavior change, you know, where they really get into doing polls and numbers and coming up with conclusion. And I think with an issue like that, that is kind of what we need. We saw on No King's Day, 5 million people showed up around the country because the issue has been so publicized. And it's bringing out not the deniers, but it's bringing out more of the people that want to do something good. And only because they're hearing what is going on. I don't know that people really read their water bills, look at their online statement other than to see the numbers are accurate. So again, it's how we reach to, particularly, they say if people are deniers, I think the only thing we can do with deniers are those that are using a lot of water is to have regulations. I think that's the only way we can reach them. But the other people, I think, can be reached by, you know, really good, which are not cheap, educational, you know, where it's in the PTAs, it's in the school, it's everywhere, not just because we have water now, but because we may not in the future, and we need to keep saving. So again, it's not an inexpensive project, but I think that's the only way that it can get done, that we can reach more people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. There are no further speakers.
Thank you. We'll move on to Director and General Manager's announcements. I'll start with filling in tonight, Paul Sellier, Director of Water Resources.
Thank you, President Sampson. Just a sort of a bit of a lighthearted announcement tonight. A few of us were at AWWA this past week. And as you know, our pipe tapping team was out there representing the West Coast. I'm kind of proud actually to report tonight that they finished in 6th place with a time of 1 minute and 29 seconds. The top team, first place, was 1 minute and 10 seconds. And realizing that we've only just sort of started getting back into this, it's a really a good showing. So that was sort of 6th place out of 30 teams that were competing. So
Right.
It was a fun time.
Excellent. Well, hats off to the team and great work. And I think you might have looked at my notes. I'm going to take that question on how they did off of there tonight. So thank you for that update for sure. And appreciate them representing us so well. Excellent. Just a quick follow-up on the general manager's report. One of the interesting graphs was the tier usage breakdown that we saw. If it's not too much work, I'd like to see it as a percentage of total water use by tier, so we have a better understanding of which tier is using the most water. Just a quick, easy look at that. That'd be appreciated. Thank you. Moving on to director's comments. Director Kush, we'll start with you online if you can hear us okay.
Yes. Can you come back to me, please?
Yep, no problem.
Just-
Director Mayer.
Yeah, I was also at the conference and the American Water Works Association conference in Denver. It was great. And I very much enjoyed seeing our own Alicia Irish, who is in the engineering department, present with Zav Irias. I think that's how you say his last name. Is that right? With Woodward and Curran. They are a partner of ours in many endeavors, and Zav used to be integrally involved with East Bay Mud. And they gave a really interesting presentation on essentially generating green energy through what a water utility is already doing. So generating our own hydropower. And it was a very interesting presentation. In this particular case, what they were talking about was decided not to be kind of cost effective enough to be used, but just showed that we're looking into those things. And overall, I thought it was an excellent presentation, and the conference was very educational. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to second your request to have a more detailed review of the tier usage. And I brought this up at a previous meeting, but realized that there wasn't a first and a second. And I know our formality is to have first and second. So I would like to ask the staff, if there is a second, to do a more detailed review of the high water users, the tier 1, 2, 3, 4, how we are doing over time, trends in reducing water consumption and efficiency and conservation with a lot of our efforts, and specifically looking at those folks. So hopefully there would be a support for that.
Thank you. Director Russell.
I attended the American Water Works meeting in Denver. I enjoyed it. It was a pleasure to see Diana there. And Alicia Irish did a great job. I was pleased to see us taking a bigger position in a national event. The North Bay Tappers were outstanding, and I appreciate the hard work. It's a bit like Indianapolis pit change for a car. And it's a bit like that in many ways, in that these districts that are in the top 5 or 3 are very competitive. Like, I think that's all these guys do. So, you know, it was quite an accomplishment to get up there, especially coming more or less from scratch. So,
Thank you. Director Kush, can we come back to you?
Yeah, thank you. On June 4th, I was asked to speak to Age-Friendly Ross about 2 topics in particular. Our progress on water supply development and our efforts to improve conservation of water resources. I will say that there was a lot of interest in amongst this audience in our conservation program, and a lot of questions on how they could better engage with our conservation team to benefit from all of the different resources we provide, both financial as well as technical, for reducing water use. So that was a very encouraging conversation with the Age-Friendly Ross group.
Great, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to board committee reports.
yeah, just watershed.
Okay, I can give that report. On Thursday, June 12th, we held a watershed committee and special board meeting, and I'll run through the key items from that. Staff provided an update on the district's continued efforts to mitigate the effects of potential wildfires on the watershed through collaboration with other agencies to study wildfire pathway modeling and through implementation of fire prevention tools. Staff provided an update on 2 proposed general service agreements, one for a 3-year contract for BIFIT maintenance and the other for a 3-year contract for BIFIT forestry and pile burn support. On that item, staff will bring the contracts to the board to consider for approval at a future meeting in July. Next item was a presentation by staff and a consultant from Point Blue Conservation Science, providing an overview of the findings of the study of local landbirds and their response to the district's implementation of BIFIP vegetation management work. Next item was an update on the watershed recreation management planning feasibility study, including the road and trail management plan and the status of the e-bike class 1 pilot. As a next step there, staff plans to hold a preliminary workshop to begin discussion of a road and trail management plan update at the next Watershed Committee meeting on September 18th. Finally, the public may access the staff reports and a video recording of the June 12th Watershed Committee meeting from Marin Water's website.
Great, thank you very much. And I'll just kind of piggyback on your comments that the Watershed Committee meeting was, I thought, very informative with 3 really interesting topics. And I definitely recommend for those who haven't seen it to watch the recording. It was definitely worth a watch. Director Russell, do you want me to handle the North Bay Watershed Association?
Sure.
Okay. Both Director Russell and I attended North Bay Watershed Association on Friday, June 4th, I believe. We had received a pretty good presentation from BCDC about sea level rise and the efforts throughout the Bay Area to adapt to that, prepare for that, and then take plans to start mitigating the effects from that, and specifically on Sonoma and Marin County's efforts, of which we definitely have a vested interest with Pelican Way being so close to the bay there and some other infrastructure as well. So interesting to see and glad we're able to monitor that process. They're planning a big conference in the spring of next year, their biannual conference. So looking forward to that. And then it's actually the group's 25th anniversary this fall. So they'll be throwing a celebration for that. And the other interesting point, and I'd like to see if we can follow up on it, but part of the North Bay Watershed Association, they were judging some competitions for grant dollars. And one of the competitions produced a study out of Sonoma State by one of their, I think it was a graduate student. The graduate student looked at conservation goals from water agencies throughout the Bay Area, and as the dollars they're putting in, is it achieving the goals that they were trying to come out with? So it'd be interesting to see how we fared in that study as well. So with that,
One more.
Yep.
Yeah. So we had the Lagunitas Creek TAC meeting. Eric Ettinger was fantastic in helping guide us, and we had a deep dive into Olema Creek and the impact of a bunch of the different creeks that are forming out of it. Outstanding meeting, thoughtful fisheries experts, and proud to be a part of it. Phil Sauter and others were there. So not much more to report or impact on us now.
Great, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Terry, do you have any public comment on the consent items?
There is one for the consent calendar, Mr. Phil Sauter.
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff for including residential water consumption by tier on page 14 of today's general manager's report. After converting from acre feet per year to millions of gallons per day, it shows that in 2021, prior to the drought, residential usage was 19 million gallons a day. Tier 1 users accounted for 75% of that volume. Tier 2 users accounted for 17%. Tier 3 users accounted for 6%, and Tier 4 users accounted for 2%. In 2022, during the drought, usage dropped by almost a quarter to 15 million gallons a day. Tier 1 users made up 82% of that volume. Tier 2 users were 12%, Tier 3 users were 4%, and Tier 4 users were 2%. In 2023, residential volume was again 15 million gallons a day, and the percentage by tier was nearly identical to 2022. In 2024, in spite of rate increases, residential use began creeping back up to 16 million gallons a day. Most likely because of adjustments to tier levels, Tier 1 usage went back to 75%, Tier 2 usage increased slightly to 13%, Tier 3 usage increased to 10%, and Tier 4 usage stayed at 2%. And finally, in 2025, residential usage crept up again to 17 million gallons a day, with Tier 1 users accounting for 70%, Tier 2 users for 13%, Tier 3 users for 14%, and Tier 4 users accounting for 3%. It's tempting to try to reach some conclusions from this data, such as a drought is a surefire way to get customers to conserve water, and that there were changes in customer behavior that lasted for 2 years after the drought, but then began to revert in 2024 and 2025 in spite of rate increases. We might also conclude that tier adjustments are a good way to increase revenues without major impacts on demand. But the data also raises questions such as which customers kept their post-drought behavioral changes and which customers reverted to pre-drought behaviors, and why residential district-wide usage increased between 2022 and 2023, while residential use remained flat. and whether rate and tier adjustments could be refined to have a greater impact on demand management and to better reflect the actual cost of providing water to specific groups of customers. I won't ask tonight that this item be separated from the consent calendar for individual discussion, but I will ask that it be brought back as an agenda item in the near future as we discuss rate adjustments and specific programs for demand management. I'd definitely like to hear staff's conclusions from the data as well as board discussion. And once again, tonight, I'm reminded that I should always listen to Director Smith and Sampson before I put together my evening comments. Thank you.
There are no further speakers.
Great. Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward with the consent calendar. I'd like to pull item H off of that and then look for a motion to approve items A through G. With just a side note, and a thank you to Alex for putting in the bid numbers for your item on the consent calendar. Appreciate seeing everyone's bid items, how it's spilled out. So thank you for doing that. And I'd like to entertain a motion for items A through G of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Vice President Smith,
Aye.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
and President Sampson.
Yes. So moving on to item H in the consent calendar, that's the district lease for Ross Valley Sanitary District at Forbes Reservoir Site. So looking at this item, look to our general counsel here, but we actually proposed a 2-year term of the lease. Like to see if we could reduce that term, but still provide the service so that Ross Valley can continue their operations as it is, but allow us to do a little more due diligence on how we got to where we're at.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, President Sampson. Yeah, based on discussions, my understanding is that there may be an interest to amend this item as proposed to shorten the term from the current proposed 2 years to a 6-month term that would take us through the end of the year, December 31st of 2025. That would allow staff to go back and have further discussions and bring some questions or some answers back to questions that were asked and better address those before we move forward with anything longer than that. So we can accept a motion for that item as modified by the term date.
So the sole modification is the reduction in term from 24 to 6 months.
As I'm understanding it, yes, that would be
Okay.
the sole modification.
Board discussion?
Nope. Look forward to bringing it back to us with time to review the impact. Thank you.
We will do that.
Supportive.
Great. And Terry, do we have any public comment on this item now?
Not on this item.
Great, thank you. So go ahead and like to entertain a motion to approve consent item number H, or letter H, excuse me, with the change in term from 24 to 6 months, all other terms remaining same.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Vice President Smith,
Aye.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
President Sampson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to regular items. A, capital program update. Alex, welcome.
Good afternoon, President Sampson, board members, Alex Nat, Director of Engineering. I'll be taking this item today, so I'll have a PowerPoint. Hey, Terry. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So I'll be providing an update on the capital improvement program Q3. So we'll start by looking at fiscal year 25 CIP expenditures through Q3, as well as looking at the next fiscal year 26-27 key projects that we'll be working on, as well as discussing some select capital projects underway and then summarizing at the end of the discussion this evening. So to start off, kind of the key important is the expenditures. So this table is similar to what we've seen before, looking at the category column on the left with the adopted fiscal year 25 budget of $49.4 million and the adjusted fiscal year 25 budget of 64.7, which accounts for the fiscal year 24 encumbrances that were rolled forward to continue the work. So the actual expenses and encumbrances through Q3, they are $46.4 million, leaving an actual remaining budget of about $18.3 million or 28%. So as you can see, the remaining budget here on the left, I want to address two of these items here, starting with the biggest one that we see here with that big 70% that's looking us in the face with the system improvement. So this category captures the ERP replacement for our SAP, as well as the grant funded projects, which include Marin City and the Canal District and roadmap projects. So with the ERP, that captures about $3.2 million of what you see of this 8.6, which is going to be carried forward because we're continuing with the ERP into this next fiscal year. In addition, another big player here is the Marin City Canal Project, which is a grant-funded project that runs through December of 2026, and there's a remaining $3.5 million that's going to be carried forward because we knew this was going to be a multi-year project. So that accounts for a bulk of this work here, as well as some of the Lake Lagunitas creek enhancement projects that our watershed are currently working on. They're going to be starting here soon. So that backs out a pretty substantial amount of this $8.6 million that's shown here. In addition, the pump station category, we see that there's 43% budget remaining in here. Just to kind of jog our memories a bit, back in April, staff did come to the planning committee and gave an update at the Castagna pump station project, which we have completed design where we're looking to advertise, but recognizing that the atmospheric river project was going forward and the need for future pumping that would double the pumping capacity of our Castagna pump station and also requiring a much larger PG&E electrical load, we decided to pivot and go in a different direction and do kind of a minimal improvements, which would be replacing a pump and the surge tank at Ignacio, which would be about $2 million. So we're looking to carry forward that money going forward as well. So if you account, since that money's already spoken for those projects that we're going to be actively working on and advertising here in the next couple of months, that really brings down, the total remaining balance to about $9.6 million, leaving around a 15% remaining budget. So, utilization of our capital between 80 and 90% is pretty good to be in. So that's a pretty good place to be in, even though this does go through June 11th. So we're kind of getting a glimpse into the fourth quarter CIP. But as we saw this evening, we did approve the Bridgeway pipeline replacement project, which is another like $650,000. It's going to actually add to reducing that cost, as well as other expenditures in the other categories for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Alex, one of the items in the general manager's report was the pre-purchasing of additional pipeline to support all of this work that you guys are doing. Is that going to be captured in here as well?
That's we're going to be coming back with an item on pipeline purchases in the future, but that is actually capitalized against the project.
So it's included in, understood. Thank you.
Correct. So that's where we are as of right now. So kind of looking at the next fiscal year 26 and 27 budget, since the last update, staff have developed the next 2-year capital budget and was recently approved by the board this month. Kind of looking at some of those bigger budgeted projects that we're going to be working on include the Marin Atmospheric River Conveyance Project, the ongoing work at the Nicasio Spillway modifications, some treatment plant projects, Pine Mountain Tunnel Phase 2, which is a 4-year multi-year project, as well as Tokoloma, Hind Tank, Redwood replacement projects, AMI, and the ERP upgrades. So part of the work we do is prioritizing these projects is looking for multi-benefits. So Tokoloma is a good example of one of those projects where we're going to be doing fire hardening improvements, as well as replacing the outdated, antiquated electrical equipment at that pump station. Also evaluating pipeline projects for opportunities to address bottlenecks. There's going to be an example in an upcoming slide here. And also focusing on the replacement of the few remaining redwood tanks. So here we have 2 Hind tanks and 1 scenic redwood tank, which are 3 of the 4 remaining redwood tanks, which we're going to be replacing in the upcoming 2-year budget, which is going to do, really improve our system resiliency overall by getting those old redwood tanks out of service. So some select capital projects currently underway in construction. We have the Fire Flow Improvement Program, Glenwood Drive Replacement Project, which is about 6,500 feet of 1950 era cast iron pipe. That's being replaced as part of the Fire Flow Improvement Program. And it's also going to be addressing leak-prone and fire flow deficient pipe, which by its nature is increasing flow capacity in that neighborhood, as well as the Park Road Pipeline Replacement Project in Fairfax, which is going to replace about 1,700 feet of 1954 leak-prone pipe as well, in coordination with the town's storm drain improvement project. So since the last update, you don't see a Marin City Phase 1 or Granada, because I'm glad to report that both of those projects have been completed. completed Marin City 4 months ahead of schedule. And we've installed and replaced about 20,000 feet of pipe with those two projects alone. And one of the bigger tank projects that we're currently underway is our favorite Pine Mountain Tunnel tanks. So since then, we've awarded the contract for phase 2. And part of the ongoing environmental process for this particular project, we have to do nesting owl evaluations every year. And this year, our consultant did the survey and didn't find any nesting birds in the area. So that's going to give us a little bit of a head start on the project. So we're starting now instead of the August 1st date because we have the clearance. And part of this first year of this 4-year project is really going to be focused on doing the tank pad and foundation, the transmission system piping, as well as the storm drain structure improvements that we're going to be installing this year. And then throughout the next year or so, we're really going to start focusing on that phase 3, which is the relocation of one of our pump stations, since we're going to be abandoning the Pine Mountain Tunnel 4 or 5 years from now, once we get these tanks constructed. Another tank storage project that's currently in construction is the Wolfback Ridge Tank Recoating Project, which is they're relatively small, 25,000-gallon tanks, but they do have coating failures and the replacement of the roof. We could see these 2 pictures on the left were an example of what a failed roof looks like. And we've already coated the tanks. We're getting ready to wrap this up here by the end of this month. And you can see the picture on the right, what the actual final coating on the inside of the tank with the replaced roof looks like. Since the last update, we also have started the San Geronimo roof replacement project, which is going to be replacing the 21-year-old leak plume roof with a Class A fire-rated roof. That's also going to be incorporating design modifications for solar panel installation in the future, and we're looking to complete that project sometime this summer. And then into projects that are currently designed, Tokoloma, we've talked about this one before. It's going to be replacing the electrical system as well as including fire hardening improvements. And we're looking to complete the design and advertise that project this winter. And we'll be expecting to complete that project in fiscal year 27. And since the last update, we have taken on the new San Geronimo filter rate control valves project, which will be replacing 6 leaking valves that are vital to maintaining the constant water level in our treatment plant system. Staff will be bringing back an item here next month for the purchase of these valves that do have an up to 26-week lead time. And once we receive those valves, we'll be executing a contract for construction sometime in the spring of 2026. And the Nicasio Spillway projects is one that's really ramped up since our last update, starting with doing multiple public outreach meetings to the Nicasio Landowners Association, the school board, Lagunitas TAC, and various regulatory agencies, as well as kicking off the initial scoping period and extending it and adding an additional meeting. Since the last update, we've also submitted the geotechnical boring application to DSOD so we could figure out what the stability of the dam looks like to ensure that it's structurally stable for the modification, as well as submitting the 30% design to DSOD for review. And we're looking to have a meeting with DSOD early next month, actually. And we've also had various surveys currently underway, and as well as public outreach, including the hydrology survey, which is looking to look at and evaluate flooding inundation in the upstream reaches of the creek and siltation as well, and then also doing the boundary survey, starting with a record survey that we're currently underway. And at some point next month, staff will be coming back with an item to the planning committee for a sediment transport item. So more to come on this project. And then our Fairfax Manor pump station. So since the last update, we have completed the design for this pump station. Currently, we're working on obtaining the easements from the town of Fairfax and the private property owner, which we're looking to wrap up next month, at which point we'll be coming back to the board for issuing a contract for construction. So all in all, the fiscal year 25 CIP through Q3, kind of really glimpsing into Q4, is generally on track, and it's really continues to move forward with this enhanced CIP as we're moving into fiscal year 26. And just kind of recognizing that, you know, the larger projects sometimes do carry forward. So like the Castania Pump Station, Marin City grant funded projects, and the ERP will be carrying funding forward to complete these projects and efforts. And staff will continue to keep the board up to date if there's any reprioritization of projects as we move forward with the CIP. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Great. Alex, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll go ahead and move to board comments. Director Mayer, we can start.
No, thank you. That was very thorough and I appreciate it. Very small comment, just for the record, which is that I'm not in Glenwood, but I'm adjacent to it. And I saw the notice, and the notice said something about it being part of Marin Water's fire flow improvement program. I think another sentence or two about what that actually means would be really helpful, and at a time when I think people are really concerned about fire and fighting fire. So just that, you know, that is the amount of water available to extinguish a fire, you know, just a couple of sentences to use it as an opportunity to kind of communicate with our public about what we're doing and that we're on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you.
It'd be an interesting point. It'd be interesting to see if the mailers that align with the property tax roll could have some information on that, because that is a property tax item, just as an option. Great. Dr. Smith.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Alex, for the presentation. I just had a flashback of one of the first times that I met you when we went out to Tokoloma Pump Station and saw the incredibly antiquated facility that we had there. They couldn't even find parts on eBay to satisfy it. And similar to Pine Mountain, where we're using that tunnel as water storage. There's so much infrastructure that we walked into in this agency that had tremendous need for updating and upgrading and maintenance. I continue to be super proud of this work and of your stepping into a leadership position here and guiding us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Russell.
Thank you for keeping it short and sweet, because I have a flight to catch, so I'm going to leave shortly. I think, Diana, the bigger impact than the ones you mentioned is the impact on insurance. That's what this is really about, is attaining these flows that ISO wishes to have. And if you don't achieve those flows, then you get in a situation where your insurance is either not available or is substantially increased. So there's that hidden value, you know, for those who are unhappy with the tax that's applied, or the fee, it feeds right back to each of us. So it's a very good thing. And with that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Director Kush.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Alex, thanks for the update. It's always helpful to stay on, you know, to be informed of how the budgets are shaping up and the carryovers. That's obviously understandable, but continuing to give us updates on spend rates and carryovers, I think, is important. So thank you for doing that. Alex, on the, you know, I know a couple of years ago when we were starting to identify capital project priorities, the clarifiers at the San Geronimo treatment plant were one, but we were also trying to get FEMA funding for that. Now, you've noted that as going forward. Do we have funding in place for the clarifiers?
That's a great question, Director Kush. We do have funding in fiscal year 27 to start the design on the clarifiers while we wait notification from FEMA for the grant funding. So that is starting for the clarifiers.
That's good to know. I think everybody should be happy to hear that. Another priority that we had spoken about as we were starting to ramp up our investments were the Smith saddle tanks and the recoding of those. Those are no longer on the list. What are we thinking there regarding the Smith saddle tanks?
That's also another great question. So currently the design for the Smith saddle tanks will be designed in such a way where they're going to balance with the new Pine Mountain Tunnel tanks. So we need to complete the Pine Mountain Tunnel tanks first. That was a tongue twister, to get that done. And then we could actually focus on the Smith Saddle tanks, because it would be operationally very difficult and challenging to also do Pine Mountain, Smith Saddle tanks at the same time as we're constructing. So we got to kind of sequence them in such a way where we're not going to put ourselves at, operational risk. So those will be coming back here 4 or 5 years from now, but that we haven't forgotten about those, not for one bit.
Yeah, and that operational requirement makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. No more questions.
But the plan is to replace them, yes?
That is correct.
Yeah, it's not to recoat them.
No, those are
Still
going
on
to be
there.
replaced.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
Just very quickly, I think we'd be remiss without making a comment on the work that you're doing on the Nicasio Spillway Gate action. I encourage our community that's out there that's impacted by this to work with us, and we will work with you. That we are a listening organization, but this is an extremely important project for 200,000 people. We understand the impact of the individuals that will potentially have problems with it. And we just hope that you'll have an open mind and work with us as we go through the process, and we will listen. We will be open. We will try to resolve all issues, and we will take our time and not move forward without really full cooperation. So I'm hopeful that we can have the energy here be positive and collaborative as we move forward.
Great, thank you. Alex, not much from mine, just another thank you, and thank you for all the work this is doing, because these really are investments in the future for everybody. So it's really good to see that we're reinvesting rate money back into this. One of the items you and your staff has been doing such a great job in is assessing for fire risk on all of our infrastructure, structure hardening defensible space. Is that going to continue through this budget? Will that continue to move as we continue to make progress on those items as well?
Yeah, we're actually wrapping up our assessment of all our above ground infrastructure this month.
Right.
And that's going to feed into what the next budget cycle and identifying future projects for prioritization.
Okay.
So that's going to be ongoing going forward.
Great. Very much look forward to seeing that. So thank you. Terry, any public comment?
Yes, we do have one public comment, Michael Siebold. Mr. Siebold, I think I've unmuted you.
Yes, you have. And this is going to be in direct reference to the Nicasio Spillway Improvement Project. And I have a few things to say. So one, I'd like to thank MMWD with the help of Supervisor Rodoni for extending the public period. And I also want to thank the previous speakers that have spoken on our behalf. As a directly affected homeowner living in Nicasio Creek for almost 30 years, there are numerous issues that negatively impact my property and the property of the neighbors on the creek. Directly affecting my property is my septic, my well, the erosion of the creek bank, reducing the size of my property, reducing my home values, and the inundation of Nicasio with mosquitoes. This inundation of water will most likely force us to have flood insurance costing us approximately $5,300 per year. That's not okay for someone that can't use the water. How is MMWD going to address these specific concerns? How is MMWD going to pay for the damage to my property values, my wells, the tree damage, and we need to have a commitment. Let's be clear, none of the proposed water storage and inundation is available to the residents of Nicasio. In the notice of preparation, MMWD states that they are investigating the adverse effects to roadways, culverts, utilities, including water and septic, and it may result in the relocation and reconstruction of such. If new septic is needed, there are mound systems and setbacks that have to currently be moved, and most residents will have mound systems in their front yard because of the setbacks that now state 100 to 200 feet of any water supply reservoir. Can MMWD explain the relationship between the Solohuli Reservoir, Nicasio Reservoir, and the newly funded conveyance? We've heard different theories. These projects must be connected in some way to help solve the 20% water storage increase. Solohuli has a known mercury contamination problem, and what happens when that hits Nicasio? MMWD wants to flood my backyard with approximately 4.5 feet of water. The powers to be state that this increase of water is needed specifically because of climate change. That's found on your website. MMWD is currently only considering the dry years. Recently, with any moderate to severe rainstorms, the water flows well over its boundaries of the creek. The base level of the creek has risen numerous feet in the past 20 years. MMWD has done absolutely zero maintenance to prevent this water from flowing over its banks. Requests to do so have gone unanswered. MMWD has already proposed this project in 1980, and I'm confused as to one states a 400 acre feet per year surplus, and in what you're.
Thank you, Mr. Siebold. We received your comment. There are no further speakers.
Just informational.
Thank you. So we'll move on to 9B.
So go ahead, the mic. The mic. Keep going. Double tap. I got it. There. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, board. I'm Vicki Garay, Human Resources Manager, and here to request an amendment to the contract for the General Counsel. And that would be the third amendment to the contract. In 2020, the Marin Municipal Water District entered into an at-will 3-year at-will employment contract with Molly McLean to serve as the General Counsel. And that contract has been amended. For the first amendment to the contracts, extended the contract through October 12, 2026. The second amendment aligned her CPI index with the index for all district staff, and also phased out the employer's contribution to the employer paid a member contribution for CalPERS. And this third amendment would extend the General Counsel at-will employment agreement contract for an additional 3 years, and the agreement would extend through October 12, 2029, and will increase the General Counsel's contracted salary by 5%. So if approved, the third amendment would become effective immediately. However, the proposed 5% salary increase would not become effective until the first full pay period following July 1, 2025, and all other terms and conditions of employment will remain the same as set forth in the original contract as amended. So staff is recommending.
Great. Thank you very much. Any board comments?
Yeah, I think this is an appropriate, thoughtful adjustment, getting to market rate, and super appreciated work by our amazing General Counsel. Thank you.
Second that sentiment.
All right, Director Kush.
I'm glad that we're moving forward with these amendments.
Great.
Or we're proposing to move forward with these amendments. Thank you.
I just want to add, I feel very fortunate that we have Molly as our General Counsel, and appreciate the fact that we'll be able to stick with her for a few more years. So thank you for wanting to be with us as well. And without any public comment.
There are none.
Great. Take.
If I can just say thank you to the board for your trust in me as General Counsel, and I will do my best to represent the interests of the district to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Yeah. With that, go ahead and entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Vice President Smith.
Aye.
Director Kush.
Aye.
Director Mayer.
Aye.
And President Sampson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on to upcoming meetings.
Thank you. For the remaining part of June, there are no further board meetings. The next board meeting is July 1st. There will be 2 committee meetings next week, the Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 24th, and the Finance and Administration Committee meeting on the 26th. In regard to regional meetings this month, we'll have the Tomales Bay Foundation meeting tomorrow, and the NBWRA, the North Bay Water Reuse Authority will have their meeting June 30th on Monday. And I'll stop there. But let's see. Oh, I'll stop there because also in your packet is all of next month's board and committee meetings. So you can just look at that.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you.
You.